And that was a special introductory song as requested by our guest, Mr. John Cahill. Welcome to Radio Mansfield, Jono.
Thank you very much. It's actually awesome to be here. I'm really pleased.
Well, there's plenty of things that we wanted to have a chat with you about, but just in order to kick us off, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your career thus far, and we'll maybe take it from there, Murray? What do you think?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. So until roughly 18 months ago, I was a long-term member of Victoria Police, 33-year career.
Yep.
My working life began for 6 years as a motor mechanic when I left school quite early, but decided that wasn't for me. So I was attracted to Vic Pol, and it was actually a wonderful career for me over a long term. It really actually helped me find my feet as a young man.
Was that in Melbourne, John? Or?
Yeah, so I grew up in Shepparton.
Okay.
Moved to Melbourne to join the cops, and my I guess a high level overview of what I did over that career. Suburban policing for a few years in, firstly Russell Street in the city, then suburban in Reservoir in the northern suburbs,
yep.
Inner north. Started to get into a bit of speciality. I was okay as a cop. I worked hard, and I think I was recognised quite early as someone that probably had opportunity for advancements. So quite early, I was put into a district support group, which is a plainclothes, crime-orientated unit that's short of being a detective. It's kind of like for young cops, essentially, to really blood their investigative teeth, which I loved, absolutely loved, really threw myself into that. But I was attracted to the Special Operations Group, which is Victoria Police's counter-terrorism / SWAT. High-risk arrest. And I set my mind on that. In fact, I'd set it over a number of years before that to get myself physically and mentally prepared for it. And in 95, I joined the Special Operations Group.
So how old are you at this stage?
I'd say I'm guessing about 25.
Okay.
Thereabouts, probably by about then. So I had 3 stints at the Special Operations Group that were broken up by me doing other things. So the first 6 years was as a senior constable operator at the SOG. I had to scratch the itch of being a detective. So for a few years, I left the SOG, said goodbye to that, got qualified as a detective, worked both at South Melbourne CIB and the Organised Crime Squad.
Yep.
Got promoted to uniform sergeant at South Melbourne, and then the SOG was calling. I went back as a team leader at the SOG for 3 to 4 years. Sought promotion again. It was about then it was recognised that I actually had a very bad back from a CT scan that I had 3 fractured vertebrae that were giving me a lot of grief. The SOG life is very physical and very hard on your body. And I thought to myself, all right, at this point, if I want longevity in this career, I need to probably get off the tools a little bit, so to speak. So I got promoted to senior sergeant at what is now the Critical Incident Response Team. So I was there when that concept was given birth to, essentially. I was there for a couple of years. Again, the SOG itch had to be scratched, and I went back as one of the senior sergeants at the SOG for 2 to 3 years. So there's my 12-year SOG career kind of broken up into 3.
Can I just ask what the difference is between the Critical Incident Response Team and the SOGIs?
It's just a different level of response. Okay. So the top level of response, SOG, for, counter-terrorism. And it's we need to throw our best and best toys and best people at this. Critical Incident Response Team is more for your bread and butter. Dad's off his meds and taking up a knife, a butter knife in the home. Yeah. It's just levels. That's all it is. And a lot of SOG operatives these days are fed from, they were CERT operatives, and then they try out and as successful to become a SOG operative. It's like a breeding ground now. Just stepping stones. It's the reserves, playing in the reserves, kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
So when I left, SOG for the last time. I surprised even myself. I applied. I thought, I'll have a go at becoming a commissioned officer, an inspector. And first time I tried and went through the process, I actually was successful, which really shocked me. I think I got maybe a coach's choice of this guy's got potential, and at 38, I'm an inspector.
Yeah, right.
That's very young for it to be an inspector. I did 2 years initially at HR, and picture that SOG senior sergeant,
Yep.
inspector HR. It was tough. They did it. They said to round me out, and it nearly broke me. I did not really enjoy that time, that corporate life. But the next job I got was the best job I've had in VicPol. So as an inspector in VicPol, you don't own a position. You're owned by the Chief Commissioner, and you get rotated to wherever he pleases.
Okay.
Yeah, and my next job was 6 years running technical surveillance, covert technical surveillance. That was amazing. So operating from a covert facility, a team of 60 guys and girls, massive budget, and we were we're a tool for Victoria Police investigators when they had a surveillance devices warrant applicable for a person. And what we did is we would do the installs for things like covert listening devices, covert cameras, covert trackers, all that kind of secret spy stuff, which is done in the dead of night, under guise, often a bit of trickery to get, surveillance tools into
That's
homes and
state,
cars and
state control, John?
Yes.
Because I would have thought that was a federally controlled thing.
no, it's state control. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, all under the Victorian Surveillance Devices Act. There's federal levels of that as well, 100%. But each state will have their own technical surveillance, as well as they'll have their own physical surveillance. They go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. Physical surveillance is the act of following someone undetected. Yeah. We're doing the technical side of it. So I did that for 6 years. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end, and I was rotated from that position out to the academy, where I did another 5 years, another full stint running recruit training in Victoria. We're getting closer to the end. My final rotation was to the licensing regulation division back in the city. So I ran for 2 years, pretty much 2 years, firearms licensing and private security licensing for 2 years.
Okay.
And then, like I said, about 18 months ago, I resigned from VicPol, and I am in a semi-retired state. It's funny because I feel like I'm as busy as I can, and how could I ever work 5 days? But I work 2 days in the fishing industry now across 3 different businesses owned by the same person. And despite having adult children, I also have a 2-year-old.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Did seem like a good idea at the time. No, she's amazing. So
Are you a different dad to a 2-year-old?
Yeah, I am. I'm a better dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that because you're physically present?
I am more available. I'm definitely more available because I have at least 1 day a week where I look after my daughter.
Okay.
And I make her, and my wife demands, she's my focus that day. So it's very much not like just, are your kids in the corner while you just do stuff, that kind of looking after her. It's very much engaged with her and, making her the most important person in the room and developing her as a human being. So I absolutely love it. And I didn't have that opportunity with my other 2 daughters that are now adults because that was right in the thick of
Career.
Yeah, of my career, my SOG years. So that
if you had had the opportunity, do you think you were mentally capable of doing what you're doing now? Were you at that time in your life? Was that something that you could have contemplated, or is it? No,
that's a great question. Not a chance.
Yeah,
not a chance. I think mentally I was probably less developed there, and I was so driven by the things that satisfied me.
Yeah, right.
So if definitely one thing in my career, like I've fished and hunted my entire life. It goes back to my earliest memories. But in my 12 years at the SOG, especially the first 6 to 8, say, I actually didn't do that much. I did significantly less than any other period of my life, and it was because my cup was full with what I was doing at work. I got all the adventure and thrill, I guess, to an extent, but the challenges that I get out of fishing and hunting, I got at work. And I literally didn't do that much. And it was kind of when I started to move back into, when I became a manager and I started to get off the tools and go up the corporate ladder a little bit, I was so thirsty again for it. And that's, it's one of those things that has to be, can't be denied in me. So if you put me back as a young dad, back with my daughters, and I didn't have that work challenge and fulfillment, I think I would have struggled to have been satisfied being a somewhat testosterone fueled dad.
Yeah, right.
To sit at home and look after little girls. I think I would have struggled. I really do.
John, can I take you back to the police force? So, just as a casual observer of the way that the police is reported on, it's gone through a wave. So we had, for instance, Walsh Street, and that leading up to that, there was a whole heap of accusations of police maybe overstepping the mark. And then we find ourselves today where there's there's hundreds of people just deserting the service. Where are we going wrong? What's happened?
Yeah, I've always said that the way we police is often at the bequest of the noisy minority. And you end up with, when you make changes, you end up with the police force you deserve because you demanded it. And I think policing over my career has significantly softened, and frontline police more and more. And this is with the advent of the technology that we now know today. It's very hard to be a cop now.
Yeah,
there will be a camera filming you from probably 4 angles with any public action you take. And, that's something that I used to teach recruits. Whatever you do, presume you are being filmed. Even in an environment where you actually don't think you are, just presume you are. Because, I think it's a big feeling with young police, especially of honestly a feeling of not being supported.
Yeah. So you've touched and felt areas of society that we never will. Over the journey, what's your sense of society?
Oh, that's a curly one.
Deep question there, mate.
Yeah, it is. A feeling of society. It's look, we've always had rat bags. We've always had lower elements and undesirables, haven't we? Like that's not a new.
Does seem to be the case, but there just seems to be a lot more.
Yeah,
is it the media? Is it? I've stopped watching the news just as a matter of interest because I just think it's so negative and there's so much volatility and aggression
but everything's recorded too, so maybe it's a question like it's always been there, but now we see it.
I think I don't watch the news either, by the way. I got no interest in what's peddled out. I think youth crime has become way more serious. So, teenagers acting up is hardly new. But teenagers doing carjackings, home invasions, and a lot of knife crime is newer. It is newer, and I think I've got no solutions for how it occurred or why it occurred, but I think there's actually a fairly fair observation that has gotten worse.
Yep.
Well, it was very different. I have a vivid recollection back in my day as a young fella. There were some things that my mates and I got involved in that were probably not absolutely ideal, but it was summary justice that was dished out at the time. The local copper would pick you up and he would explain to you the error of your ways in ways that were very simple to understand, and that was it.
It worked.
And it worked. It was effective. But I had this situation occur when I got custody of my 2 daughters. I was still a young guy, and I had I got custody of my 2 daughters, both of whom were under 5, and I had the local copper arrive to do a little check on us one night, and he came in and he was telling me that if I was doing something inappropriate, if I was behaving inappropriately, because I was, this is going to sound a little bit racist, because I'm Anglo-Saxon, He said a punch in the face will sort you out immediately. He said we can't do that with many other nationalities because the level of violence would just become extreme and immediate, and it's just a very different kind of mentality. And I guess the way we were brought up was fairly basic, and it wasn't that complicated. And there was never any doubt. Like some of my best mates are blokes I got into a blue with at the pub, and you get a punch in the nose, and you might dish one out, and then you'd buy a beer, and you'd have a new mate.
Yeah.
But now the propensity for weapons and extreme violence was that, if someone went down, if you punched someone and they went down, that was it. And there was never any suggestion of sinking the boots or taking things to the level that seems to be just almost accepted.
It seems very normal now, doesn't it?
It's quite extraordinary.
Yep.
It is. John, you were about in the force during COVID.
Yes.
That must have been an extremely interesting time.
That was in the crossover of my time at the academy, and then into LRD in the city was the COVID years. That's where that crossed over for me. The immediate challenge was the continuation of the current recruit cohort and the continuation of recruiting during COVID. And remote learning models, et cetera. That was actually a significant problem thrown in our lap that I don't think we ever got properly a hold of. It was so challenging, and then into the city. So I never missed a day's work during that. So many occupations obviously got completely shut down. Obviously, policing doesn't. It's funny, we were having a campfire conversation last night about COVID and about all of this. I won't repeat that. But I remember the palpable feeling of frustration being Melbourne-based, of driving into the city every day to like virtually deserted roads, a deserted city. It was a ghost town. Going into an office and working with, 40 people, all wearing masks and QR coding our way around life, and then driving home, and then been stuck with 5 kilometres from my home from that summer. It's one of the low points for me personally. It's actually the first time, and hopefully the only time in my life, where I fell out of exercising. I lost the will to exercise, and it's never actually been. It makes me angry because it's when I needed it the most.
Yeah, right.
But I really did. I lost the will to exercise in that period. That was horrible. That I think COVID generally and what police officers were made to do is why there's over 1,000 vacancies in Victoria Police now, and they can't recruit to them.
Yep,
100%. That's why.
It's
The damage that's been done, and like the things that we're learning now about stay-at-home orders, etc., not being backed by medical, the chief health officer's orders like they were reported to be. Wow. Wow.
That's about the best way you can describe it on public radio, I guess, is just wow, because, the word unprecedented got wheeled out a lot during COVID, but what we're finding out about what happened in Victoria now is even more unprecedented, and it's just mind-numbing, the level of control and stupidity that occurred.
But I don't think we can leave this little section out, Neil, without asking John, give us a story. Give us something that we can say this was fun, or this was exceptional, or this was extraordinary, or this was
a policing one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, look, I think the headline story is always when people ask me about my policing career. I've forgotten more than I remember, I reckon. But Port Arthur probably is the big one. So I joined the SOG in 95. My training finished in September 95, so I'm now a team member.
Yep.
I think Port Arthur was June 10 of the next year. So I'm less than a year, but I was on the on-call team that weekend, and I remember I worked that day, physically worked, and I was at a friend's for dinner, and it had all gone down around that time, finishing work and making my way to my friend's place for dinner. So, have you seen what's happened? And, we turned the TV on and it's like, oh. I'm like, have they got this guy? Have they? And it became apparent, oh no, they got a siege. I said, we're going to this.
Yeah,
And I knew it because Tassie had such a limited SOG capability. They had a capability, but it was part-time. So their sole operatives were like highway patrol, bit of SOG, detective, bit of SOG, that kind of thing. Very small police force, Tassie. So it was like, yeah, I think we're going. And it was back in the days of pagers.
yes.
The pager went off.
Yeah.
The pager went off together, and into the office we went. High-level briefing over what we had over there, and then we're out to Essendon Airport to load up one plane to head over.
So how many people are we talking about?
We took 8 operatives.
Yep.
I think plus 2 that weren't on call. That 2 extra snipers got called in because of the nature of the job. It was like, I think we need snipers. And then the team, not the team leader, the officer in charge element. So I think there was a dozen of us in total. And this is where the funny stories start. We're loading up this aircraft, and the pilot is a contracted pilot, not a Victoria Police member. Vicpol had its choppers, but they didn't have fixed wing back then. And he got the assignment. He understood the urgency of what we were doing, and he wasn't weighing that the items that we're bringing body armor, we're bringing sniper rifles, all of our bits and pieces, and we didn't travel light. We did not. And we were going to a job like that. It's like, better bring that. Everything's coming with us. And he'd stop us as we're like running past him to the plane. He'd go, give me a feel of that. And he's like, oh, put that in the wing. Give me a feel of that. Put that inside. That,
Trying to balance.
he was doing his best without weighing it. Yeah. And when we taxied, get ready to launch, he said, guys, we are heavy. Yeah. He said, I hope we cleared the fence. And we just cleared the fence at Essendon.
Oh, wow, we
knew that feeling, don't we, Neil?
Yeah.
We blast over Bass Strait, and well above us, middle of Bass Strait, we had a jet, way above us. He goes, it's John Laws. He'll beat us. He'll beat us there considerably. So we get important ones. We get into Hobart Airport, and we were ushered inside to the there's a police station at the airport, and we meet the chief commissioner, who's standing there like in casual attire and his duffel coat, and there seemed to be just no urgency whatsoever to get going. Like pleasantries were exchanged, and we're standing around. It's like, let's go. We've got a job to do. We've got
At this stage, do you know where the Martin Bryant is?
Yes, he's holed up in a coastal, basically a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Called Seascape Cottages, and he's got 3 hostages. Right. And he's firing shots left, right, and centre right now. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're standing around having, we're talking about the weather. Wow. And how terrible this is. And our inspector back then, Don Stokes, says to him, "Look, perhaps, sir, we should maybe get going." And the chief says, "Oh yeah, we will as soon as I get a Bible, because I've got to swear you in as Tasmanian special constables." And I said, "Oh, what? We understood that. We understood we would have to be sworn in, but." Okay, let's grab that Bible and do that. And he goes, oh, I can't find one. I've sent one of the troops to the academy to go find one in their library. Okay, and Don looks at the phone book that's on the table and says, there's one there. There's a Bible right there. And the chief looks at it like, he's got this confused, quizzical look on his face and says, oh, that's not. The penny dropped. Are you trying to make me say that's a Bible? That's not a Bible, Anyway, after a period of time, this senior constable wanders back in, like not a care in the world. Oh, there you go, boss, there's the Bible. Anyway, we all lean in, get a finger on the Bible like it's the Knights of the Round Table touching the chalice, and got sworn in, and then we were gone down at Port Arthur. Look, the reality is after that, it's, despite its magnitude, it's somewhat another siege. It became, I wouldn't say apparent, but it became more likely than not that our hostages were actually already dead.
Yeah, right.
That they had been executed. And part of that's based upon in the I think it's the 33 people that he already murdered, or 31. There was never any indication of I'm keeping someone alive here. Everything is execution. Like the MO didn't suggest why would he keep people alive. But nonetheless, we had to have that in mind, that we might have hostages to try and rescue at some point here. And it was challenging in the context of he fired shots all night, hundreds of rounds. The cottage, it was a multi-level 2 or 3 level cottage.
Yeah,
quite a expansive joint.
I'm seeing it.
Yeah, and he would go to one window, fire shots, appear at another window. Not appear. In fact, he never appeared, but just shots would be fired from. And we, in the field, doing containment for that, it was dangerous. And like most guys actually got to the point of like trying to find physical cover to be behind from gunshot, and some shots fell close. Did feel close to people. Fast forward to dawn, a little bit after dawn, and he set the cottage alight, and it's amazing how fast a timber cottage burns, very, very quick. And it got to the point where it was called by one of the snipers, everyone's dead in there. There's no chance anyone has survived.
So it's a fierce fire.
Fierce fire, absolutely fierce fire. And about then, after the call's been made, a person bursts out of the end bit that isn't quite burnt.
Yep.
And it's a person on fire, basically on fire. And we have no knowledge one way or another of what our hostages look like, other than we knew their genders. One of them was a woman, and this actually had the appearance of a woman. The emergency action code word was given. Bang, we're down there. We're hanging on the back of 4 drives. Nearly damn rolled it. Getting down there as fast as we could to try and save this person. It was Martin Bryant.
Because of the long blonde hair.
The long blonde hair.
Yeah.
And distinct memory of so Bryant was face down on the ground, and he was in a lot of pain. He sought to get up onto his hands and knees, and one of the Tassie SOG operatives kicked him in the back to keep him down the ground. And I remember his foot sliding up his back.
Oh no!
Taking his skin with it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he like degloved his back. He was very burnt. And then he was arrested. I think there's a lot of controversy around Port Arthur, which I try to keep away from. A lot of conspiracies. I don't know. I just know what we dealt with there on the day. But I believe, and I feel really reasonably confident that forensically they showed that those hostages were dead before the fire, way before the fire.
Yeah.
They had gunshot wounds.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so
it's a reasonable assumption.
It's a reasonable assumption, isn't it? So that's the big one.
Yeah.
In the terms of like everyone knows Port Arthur. Right?
Yeah.
There's literally hundreds of other jobs. Some I could talk about, some I cannot. We were campfiring a few of these later because actually the boys that I'm camped with at the moment out the Delatide Arm were like, tell us a good story. And I'm like, all right, I started and then I got on a roll. Might have had a couple of rums in me.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. But it's the big one, Port Arthur.
Yeah, fair enough. Upon reflection, John, in your quieter moments, do you think it would have been something that you would have considered just putting a bullet in him?
Oh, it was discussed. So we were given a green light to effectively shoot on sight. And the funny thing about that is that back then that's not supported by legislation.
Yeah.
I believe it is now. I think there is legislation now in place. And I fought for this because I actually ended up running sniper training in Australia across all of the tactical teams. When I was involved in the old SACPAV, which is now the National Counter-Terrorism Committee, I was involved in that for a lot of years in my role. But we fought for the support that a police marksman sniper can be given an instruction to take an action and not suffer legal consequences for that action. And that didn't exist back then. But those kind of protections have to exist because sometimes when you're like, it's hard enough to shoot well on targets that are moving and armed and the many factors, right? You don't want the decision making in that person's head of, but should I shoot?
Yeah.
Am I going to get in trouble?
Right.
Am I going to
ruin the rest of my life because of this shot? Back then, that protection didn't exist. But having said that, they said you've got a green light. I don't know where we would have stood
Yeah.
Does that seem a bit strange that you're kitted up with the gear to be able to do that, and yet you might get in trouble for actually doing your job?
So, the role of the police sniper back then was the primary role is to actually provide observation. That's the number one role, that you're the eyes, you're the person that can get in and be concealed and not seen and see from long range. Number one. Number two is like that capacity to take a precision shot to say save a hostage's life. And it's a somewhat unrealistic Hollywood example of someone holding a gun to someone's head, where they're showing a bit of their face and you take the shot. That's Hollywood.
Yep.
It really is Hollywood. That's just not how things play out. And if you look at an example like this, if Martin Bryant hadn't have already murdered them and there were people in the house, surely whacking him and eliminating him, despite what he's doing at that time, there needs to be some common sense there. He's shown the propensity to murder a lot of people.
Yes.
So why do we give him a chance now to murder more?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Gee, Neil,
We're getting into areas that I guess we figured we would. Talking to a bloke like John Cahill with us this afternoon. We've got some messages and sponsor messages. You're listening to The Man Show on Radio Mansfield 99.7, and we're talking with our special guest John Cahill this afternoon. Believe it or not, we are going to get into fishing and hunting, which is pretty much what we wanted John to focus on this afternoon, because we know he's got a lot to talk about, particularly with fishing in Victoria at the moment. There's a lot of controversy around what's happening with the Victorian Fisheries Authority, and we do want to get John's insight into that. But at 7 minutes to 1 o'clock, we'll be back with John to The Man Show at Radio Mansfield. It's just gone 5 minutes to the hour, and we'll have to do the news at that time. But John, we're with our special guest John Cahill this afternoon, and one of the things that we particularly wanted to get an understanding of and give you an opportunity to talk about is men's mental health, which has become quite an issue. Can you tell us about your experiences in regard to PTSD and men's mental health, John?
Yeah, gladly too, actually. Policing and the SOG sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's got its downside because all too often jobs in policing and definitely jobs in tactical policing don't always go to plan. You get them done, you achieve your mission, but sometimes there's considerable bark off. Considerable. Right in the middle of my police career, I had events occur that I don't really want to talk about the events themselves.
Yeah, sure.
That's really probably not relevant, but you just imagine bad stuff happened.
Yeah.
But some significant things happened to me personally that initially, well, for a long time I actually didn't understand. But it manifested itself in severe anxiety. We've all experienced it. At its worst, anxiety can be quite crippling, mentally crippling. And how it showed itself in me was I couldn't get away from catastrophizing how I believed something might play out. So you might look at a spectrum of how a set of circumstances might be from, that's not that big a problem, to this is world ending, as an example.
Yeah.
I would get hyperfixated on to the right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help it. That's me when I'm awake.
Yep.
Me when I was asleep, and this happened for a full decade. I would go to sleep every night, usually assisted by alcohol.
Yeah.
And because it is wonderful to get you to sleep, it is. You feel a bit better. And at some point in that night, I would wake in a absolute pool of sweat, head to toe, absolute head to toe. I'm talking to the point where you can wring your pillow out.
Wow.
That level of sweating,
Yeah.
whilst feeling like you've been in a refrigerator. Just so cold. And, you're changing your sheets every day. You're getting a new pillow every month. It's just horrible. I just don't know a better way to show the physical signs of high anxiety, high stress, PTSD than this is happening while you're not even awake.
Yeah.
Not even awake now. And I was super high functioning because this is right through, my SOG career and a little bit beyond it. Super high functioning, considered one of the best snipers in the country. A good team lead. I'm talking myself up here, but I was
the reality.
I was operating very well as a human, but me as a person, I was struggling, and it definitely affected my relationships. I've got young kids. This is not a good time, and I am divorced from the marriage that existed at that time, and 100% it was a contributing factor in things that go wrong over a long period of time. I also at one point crossed over, I think is the right point, from as well as having anxiety to developing depression. And everyone's depression, I guess everyone's mental health is different, but I best describe it by the feeling of I don't want to die, but I'm not that keen on living either.
Yeah, right.
And that's a lyric from a Robbie Williams song. But whenever I hear it, it's like actually gives me the chills because I felt that for a long, long time. And to the point where I actually had suicide backup plans. So I knew how I would kill myself. But whilst operating well in my life, like I think if it happened, there would have been a couple.
Was that clinical with you?
Oh yeah, absolutely it was. And it's funny because like suicide is a dirty word. It has been for a long, long time. But I think we need to have discussions around it and understand it's desperate mental states where they can't see a way out. It looks like the clearest option.
Yeah,
because it is an option.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good one. I'll add, it's not a good one, but it is absolutely an option. So conversations need to occur. It needs to not be stigmatized, and men in particular need to be open up to their family, their friends, their mates, and get clinical help. And I did. On 2 occasions, I've actually got clinical help where I've gone, said, I'm not right, I need help. And we've worked through for a long period of time to, I don't think get better is the right word, but certainly learn how to manage my issues. And it's actually to the point now, not being part of VicPol is a big part of this.
Yeah.
But I live so anxiety-free now. I probably should care more about some things. But I've
gone too far the other way.
I've gone too far the other way, maybe. But my wife would say that for sure.
Yeah.
Can you care more? I guess, I think we've only got a small amount of time to talk about this. My take home is it's normal. It exists, and we ought to be open and honest about it with people we can trust.
Yeah, we're very lucky in the town. We have a couple of groups that really do reach out to try and help people who have concerns.
Yeah.
In that regard.
We've had some interviews with them in here with Let's Talk and some of the other groups that do a fantastic job around town. And I think in generations gone by, this was not something that was ever discussed, and it was just a taboo subject. And the fact that you're able to share your experiences with us today is quite extraordinary, and hopefully it does trigger something in people who might be feeling like they're not coping all that well and think maybe it's time for me to get a little bit of support.
And I strongly advocate for, by all means, tell a trusted mate, like that's good. But your mate's not skilled in this. So, have someone you can trust, absolutely. But if you're not right, get professional help and take the time to find someone you gel with.
Yep.
You don't want to tell your story. You don't want to tell your darkest, sometimes embarrassing, most horrible thoughts and secrets to someone you don't connect with. You've got to connect with your therapist.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice. Hey, Neil, how about we lighten up after the news and change the topic a little bit and get onto some.
Yeah, it's an important subject, mate, but I think you're right. I think that's not the only reason we got John in. He's just a fascinating guy, and we really appreciate the insights you've given us in the first hour, John, and look forward to having a chat to you after the news. Have a bit of a talk with John Cahill about what's happening in the fishing and hunting divisions, and John is actually been up here in the Delatide Arm doing a bit of fishing and hunting as we speak, John.
I have. I think I must stink to the high heavens at the moment because I've been camping for a couple of days.
Haven't wanted to say anything.
Yeah, you fit right. Yeah. You fit in nicely here, mate.
Smell of campfires, probably smell of deer and a bit of Murray cod at the moment. But
that's a good thing. That's a good.
What a cologne! What an absolute cologne.
Good stuff.
But it's fair. 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? You turned a page. You'd been a copper up until that time, and suddenly we're doing different things.
We are.
Talk to us about that.
As in the work side?
No, talk to us about where we're headed now with recreational stuff.
Oh, well, so that's not new. I've pursued fishing and hunting for a long period of my life, but I guess I get a tiny bit more time now to do it than perhaps I had a little while ago. So out of my standard work week, I work 2 days a week. I look after my youngest daughter for a day a week. There's technically now left quite a few days where I could do things, and my wife's very supportive of the things that I love to do, and I try not to take the PISS about it. But I do get out and hunt and certainly fish more than anything, both salt and freshwater a lot. And I am very well travelled in terms of global travel and travel around Australia, chasing my fishy dreams.
Talking about fishing dreams, what's happening in fisheries at the moment? Fisheries Victoria seem to have an agenda that I'm not completely across, but it seems that they've been doing an excellent job with managing the fisheries in Victoria, as far as keeping an eye on the dudes who would take too many and do the wrong thing. And I'm reading lately that they've decided to make all those positions, or many of the positions of inspectors, being made redundant. Is that even a possibility, John, or am I misunderstanding something there? It doesn't make sense.
Sadly, it's true. I think if we're going to discuss this at the outset, I've been a long-term fan of the VFA. A lot of friends there. I'm not sure if they're still friends, but because honestly, it's testing that. But up in the executive and the senior science roles and enforcement roles, I've known a lot of these people for kind of a lot of time. Yeah. Big fan of their work. And I think they've probably been lucky also. They've been in an era where government has spent money. It's injected money into fishing for a bunch of years now. And I grew up in Shepparton. I've fished Eildon since I was a kid. Eildon aside, all over the state, fishing's never been better. Maybe not never. That's probably a bit rich, but in my lifetime, it's never been better in that time. It's really, really good.
Certainly, looking at at Facebook, the photographs of people holding those monstrous Murray cod, the meteries, just seems to be more and more rare. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of stuff that's gone right.
There's a lot of stuff that's gone right. I'm quite confident to say that Lake Eildon is now the premier Murray cod lake in Australia.
Wow.
I think it eclipses all others now. Because a few years ago we were saying, it's got the potential to be. No, I think it's arrived. It's actually the best lake. Like last winter was the first kind of couple of recorded 100-pounders.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's a big fish.
And that's only going to increase. So it's almost like this. You only caught a metery. It's literally getting like that. It's like, metre 10, metre 15, metre 20, and these fish that are nudging 100 pounds, they're like metre 30 Murray cod.
So presumably a good reason for the fact that we've got so many fish has been, to a degree, the enforcement in making sure that we don't.
Yeah, definitely. So, in the first hand, the helping hand that fisheries have given this local fishery by stocking it, that's definitely been a massive part of it. But then the other side is making sure that people do the right thing, because we have people that will quite willingly do the wrong thing. The VFA likes to say, culture has changed around Murray cod and people wouldn't do that anymore. And I do agree that the culture has changed, but I refute that people wouldn't do that anymore. There's plenty of people that when you're not looking in the dark at night will take a big fish, will overbag. We'll load up on golden perch above, and most of it is the take for sale in the illegal restaurant.
is that
market.
right?
It is,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. So specifically from memory, we used to have something in excess of 70 inspectors. We're down to under 10 now, I believe, for the whole of the state.
Oh, the numbers are quite confusing. So the actual gazetted numbers, I think, is in the 90s.
Right.
But they've been running on a 30% vacancy rate now for several years. They've been not filling vacancies. So
what's driving this behaviour, John? Is this VFA basically deciding that everything's okay, or is this say government saying you've got to make cuts, or
so
what's driving it?
the when this was all put out and sold to us with a fair bit of spin attached to it, about a month or so ago, it was based around all the government departments have been told they have to make savings. And I believe that to be fact. The state's fairly broke and not in great shape due to a number of factors: COVID, Commonwealth Games, suburban rail link, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. The state's not
Perfect sense.
it's not in great state. Not in great state. But my issue is where the VFA, when they've gone and crunched the numbers, where they've decided we will make our savings. And they've made the bulk of their savings at the front line, and they're making a bunch of positions. So if there's a vacancy currently, it will not be filled. And then the positions that sit around Port Phillip and Western Port Bay, where the majority of illegal fishing statistically does occur, they are significantly reducing the numbers of both fisheries officers and fisheries officer stations around those two bays, to the point where the numbers that we have now, it'll be roughly half the numbers of enforcement officers. They're also, at the same time, changing their roles from being a pure fisheries officer where your job is to investigate, engage with the public, take out search warrants, investigate crime, disrupt high levels of organised crime around fish crime. And there is a lot of fish crime. Fish is money. You know how much you go buy a kilo of King George whiting, you're handing over $100.
Wow.
A fishmonger in Melbourne. Like it's big money. So the change of their roles is to a predominantly engagement officer role, where enforcement still exists. They've still got their powers, but it's not their primary role anymore.
Yeah.
You're going into community engagement, and a fisheries office will in the future be public facing. Because normally they've been no public access. It's a investigative kind of back of house place. Now it'll be like, come to the visitor centre and here's the pamphlets on this and that, and they'll have to be manned. So previously a fisheries station isn't manned. They come to work, get their gear, they go out and find fish crime. That's what they do, right? Now you'll have to have people in these community hubs. I think they're calling them. They're now not out patrolling or, in a boat or walking up the pier or walking the banks of Lake Eildon. So the entire approach to enforcement has been flipped on its head, halved and watered down. And it's been sold to us under the guise of we have to save money. Okay, we'll accept that's fact. And the other factor is they're saying compliance is so high. So what they base that upon is a fisheries officer records what they did, the number of people they spoke to, versus, we gave out infringement notices, or we're submitting a brief of evidence against this person, etc. The VFA is saying 90% of their contacts with people, no offence, people are doing the right thing. Hang on, we've got over 1 million people in Victoria that fish. On the back of the target 1 million, we want more people fishing more often. Yep. They took that up from about 700,000 to over 1 million licence holders. Over 1 million, right? We're halving enforcement, and we've got, by their own statistics, which I don't necessarily trust, 100,000 fishers that don't do the right thing. That don't do the right thing. And look, one other point I want to make about the whole stats side of it is, if we talk about victim crime, probably a tiny bit back to policing. So someone has their car broken into or someone's assaulted, whether there's an offender known or not, there's one count of crime, one burglary, one car theft, one assault. When fisheries officers go out, there's no victim. There's no victim of a theft of fish except the state. So we only know about offending when we catch someone. That's the only time. So it's proportional to effort.
Yeah.
The more we go out and look for them, the more we find. It's a fact. And the fisheries officers have actually been saying over the last few years, they've been watering our roll down already. So many public events we have to go and attend where it's like, it is community engagement. I'm not saying it's important, but their lack of patrol hours is now being used actually against them.
So can I just get clarity on what the VFA actually is there for? So if we're saying we're trying to get to 1 million active fishers or whatever it is, that's fine. But if you're inclined to fish, you're going to fish anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. The VFA's role, whilst they don't have, the documentation to describe exactly in front of me, it's to manage our state's resources and manage that in a bunch of ways. But it's also, it's become less tangible things to me as a fisher of like driving tourism.
Yep.
There's a lot of that and you can get it. The state government's providing the money. They want a return on this other than just protecting the fish. I get it and I understand it. The beef I've got, I'll centre into the beef that I have, is the VFA had to make savings. We'll accept that. Where they chose to make savings really bothers me. Straight to the front line, we're gonna decimate enforcement. We're gonna decimate the visible presence of them as an authority when they didn't cut events, public facing events. There's a bunch of kind of, you can argue these roles are a little bit fat. It will elsewhere in the VFA.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I'm a big fan of fish stocking, big fan. The VFA's made a big noise about stocking 10 million fish a year. They built the Arcadia hatchery and it's still ongoing. They're digging more ponds. We're gonna grow our own 10 million fish a year and stock them. I say on the basis of what science? I don't think, honestly, every pond in Victoria has been stocked with fish. It has. Some are a waste of money, absolute waste of money. Like the fish don't survive more than the weeks after that they're put in there. But, they might be put in there for public holidays for the kids. I get that. Or for school holidays, rather. I get that. But they're wasting so much money. It's almost like this is, you just want to get rid of fisheries officers, is what it's feeling more and more like.
Yeah.
John, my understanding is that potentially we're also losing capacity as well. So some of the equipment that the authority controls, whether it's boats or whatever it may be, are being sold off as well. Is that so? Even if we wanted to ramp it up, this is not a short-term slowdown. This is you're removing or reducing the capacity to ever pick up the pace if things maybe we've overcorrected. Is that the case?
Oh, that's such a good point. So I don't know that they've sold any assets yet, but they're talking about closing 3 of the fishery stations around the bays.
Yeah, right.
And then opening these community hubs, different venues, different places. But you would make a presumption, I think it's fair, that the equipment that supported those fisheries officers, well, why would you keep them? So they'll undoubtedly get sold off. Boats will get sold off. So here's the flip side. If the trend shows over the years that follow, we've got a problem here. We've got declining fish stocks. We've got massive poaching. We probably, the admissions we might have got this wrong. Wouldn't be an admission. You'd never get an admission, but we want to ramp up enforcement again.
Yep.
So what does that look like? That looks like the VFA approaching government for an ERC bid. Expenditure Revenue Committee.
Okay.
It's where government departments like VicPol does this. We've got this capability gap and we need to fund it way beyond our budget. So they present to government on this special issue. It's called an ERC bid. So they would present an ERC bid, we've got fish crime out of control. We need to address this. Usually it's a couple of years before your ERC bid gets a look in because there's many other priorities around the state. So eventually maybe you get the money back to employ fisheries officers again. And we know, the ERC bid will include boats and stuff. What are we talking, 2 to 3 year ramp up? to re-employ people that are now actually inexperienced. A fisheries officer is a lot like a cop. Of you don't hit the ground running.
Yeah, yep.
Depending on your competency and who's guiding you and training you in your formative years as in those roles, those enforcement roles, somewhere between 2 and 4 years before you become useful.
John, is it viable to have enforcement officers without boats? In other words, you're at the ramp seeing what's coming back in the boats?
It's better than nothing. And a lot of fish crime is detected that way. It is. I do know of some investigations that have been long-term problematic ones involving poaching golden perch in Lake Eildon. We'll keep it local.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times the people that were suspected of poaching and then selling golden perch were checked on the water, checked at the ramps, they were always within their legal limits. They had fish. They're very good fishers, very industrious.
Yep.
Each person, yep, you've got 5, you got 5, you got 5. It looks bad what you're doing out there, but by all accounts, by all of our checks, you're legal. A long-term investigation, it was over 2 years. I believe it was an intercept back in Melbourne where all these parties rejoined each other, and we're getting to the pointy end of where this goes to be stored, frozen, and distributed to restaurants. Gotcha. Well away from the boat ramp, well away from the water.
Yep.
Of all right, you've got a trafficable quantity of fish now. 2 years for that to occur. So fisheries need resources and support and time. It's not simple. People go to great lengths. Like if you're out on the lake, doing what we do, we do a lot of our Murray cod fishing at night. I've been checked in 5 years. I'm not knocking fisheries. I'm not knocking fisheries for that. They can only do what they can do with what they've got. But now we're going to halve it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to halve that and actually change their role. I reckon a really good example is this. Like Eildon's covered by 2 fisheries officers that I'm pretty sure now are from Snobs Creek. My memory might be wrong, but I thought they used to be at Alexandra. I believe they're at Snobs now. You go to the east of the state. So from basically the start of Gippsland through Lakes Entrance, which is our largest commercial fishing port, through down to Malakuta, which is Abalone Central, commercial Abalone Central. Like that's half of our state's coastline under the new proposal to 2 fisheries officers at Lakes, 2 at Malakuta. One person goes on leave or has to go for training or has got a sick day or on paternity leave, whatever, can't operate. So Bendigo's a great example. 3 years, they've had 1 fisheries officer because they won't fill the vacancy, right?
Yeah.
That fisheries officer under their OH&S is prevented from operating after dark, isn't allowed to approach campsites, isn't allowed to approach groups, not allowed to haul illegal fishing equipment like out of the water. And I get these OH&S rules do need to. I get it, totally get it.
This is very reminiscent of the previous hour's chat with the police and defanging them.
Yeah, very defanged. So, and that's just, I know a little bit about Bendigo, but it's all over the state. I think Swan Hill's been that way for years as well. It's really, really concerning.
When we have these kind of conversations, John, it always strikes me that bad things happen when good people take no action. So our listeners sitting at home or sitting out in their boats, what can they do to start addressing this?
It's all tangible, and I'm really glad you're asking that because I think the fishing community can be, they love to be outraged online.
Yeah.
Love to, post a Facebook comment of outrage and then do nothing. There are a few things you can do. There's a parliamentary petition, which of 1 million fishers, we only have 15,000 signatures. And I think we only need 2,000 to get it debated in Parliament. Okay, we're going to get it debate. But I think you need like 100,000 signatures on that. You need to show the voters are outraged by this action. And 15,000 doesn't really do it for me. So that parliamentary petition, that goes Parliament of Victoria to the petitions, and you'll see it there. The write to your local member, write to the minister responsible, Demopoulos. You won't get a reply, but let him know what you think about it, respectfully, of course.
Yep.
And here's a big one. Wreck fishers in Victoria are supported by a government-funded, this is ironic, government-funded body called VR Fish, Victorian Wreck Fish.
Yep.
And their role, among others, to both promote fishing in Victoria is to also advocate for anglers' rights. So currently, this is really kind of weird. You've got a government-funded body that is actually working quite hard against the VFA. And it's not ideal. And VR Fish needs to be independently funded. Some corporate sponsorship is probably the path they ought to go, but you can become a paid member of VR Fish. It's a $25 a year thing that it literally helps them advocate for wreck fishing issues and rights. And I think VR Fish are doing a pretty good job at the moment with literally one hand tied behind their back because they're government funded. Because literally you could get a situation where the state says, you haven't got any funding anymore. And like, yeah, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. So if you were had your crystal ball out under the current scheme of arrangement with what's proposed, what are our fisheries looking like in 5-10 years?
So I think it's going to happen. I think regardless, government will just barge through and push on with this, despite the outrage. But that can't let us stop trying to get this looking more sensible. And to me, what sensible looks like is go back to the table, VFA. Look at your expenditure across the board and look right through your business for a scenario. Like, to me, if we had got a scenario where, all right, these programs are over, we're going to cut stocking back for a few years because they literally could. These positions are going, we're going to lose. I'm going to just chuck a random number out. We're going to lose 5 fisheries officers. I'd shrug my shoulders and move on.
Yeah.
I don't think I would make a noise about it. It's the way it's so targeted at the front line that gets my ire up. So what does it look like in the future? So a person who I didn't even know that long ago who I communicate with most days, Murray Donaldson, was a fisheries officer, head investigator for years and years, retired a few years ago. He talks about the bad days of poaching before they got serious about it and got some serious investigative capability. He holds deep concern that the illegal take of fish could become at its worst the new tobacco wars.
Yep.
That's where he's pointing. Back in my policing career, like both at the Tex and at the SOG, and I was a detective, we worked on some really bad characters, and you know what? A lot of them fished. Yeah, a lot of them actually fished. We're not all good guys out there on the water. And there's money to be made.
Yeah, as soon as there's money to be made,
there's money to be made.
Up.
It does. Like criminals look for a weakness.
Yeah.
Like if we go right back, remember armed robberies where it'd be like run into a bank branch, pick them up.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
They stopped because we stopped dealing with cash, and it firstly got too hard because the systems were so good around preventing the crime, but also there's no cash in banks anymore. Armed robberies in banks do not exist anymore. What's our next level that we can go to? Because we're gonna make this illegal money somehow, right?
Yeah.
Fish crime. Don't rule it out that it's going to get to that.
Well, the work that's been done over recent years to have the protected areas around Australia, in our bays, the
Marine parks.
The marine parks seems to have had dramatic impact. I remember when the scallop dredging was going on and they were just absolutely raping the bottom of the bays and just ripping it and destroying it. And then it all stopped, and it took a long time for that to come back. That certainly happened in my time. I going fishing with Dad out in the bay, you'd be lucky to get a flathead. And
if you got a snapper, like in the early 90s when scallop dredging was still occurring,
right,
that was to be celebrated. Now it's almost like, especially in the peak time, it's a given. It's almost a given.
Yeah,
fishing is very good in Victoria right now.
Does that breed complacency, do you think?
I think it has in the VFA. I think that's exactly what's happened. Is like these markers and indicators and satisfaction of people are good. Okay, we'll literally go off a cliff and drop this other element of fisheries management, which is the enforcement arm, and I think it's a product of almost success.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Could I just ask? This is ridiculous, but I'll ask it anyway because that's what I do. flathead. Back in the day, rats of the sea.
Mm.
Now,
$50 a kilo or something. They're ridiculous.
it's almost like wine, isn't it? Where we Riesling's in, Riesling's out, whatever it happens to be. Rats of the sea, in, out.
It's funny you say rats of the sea because in my life I've never known them not to be valued. My dad, God bless his soul, when we used to do our annual trip to Tathra, all Dad was interested in was his flathead drifts, and he would fill a laundry basket up the flatties each day, fill them down, and get them. There was a facility to freeze them back then. I'm talking a lot of years now. Like we might even be going back to the 70s here. Certainly, yeah, I reckon we are. We're going back to the 70s to talk this discussion. And it'd be like, I was so into my fishing as a kid, and I was like, Dad, can we catch a shark? Can we go to the reef and catch a snapper? Can we catch a kingfish? And begrudgingly, once on my birthday, he went to the reef, and then it's like, are you happy now? We're going back on a flathead drift. It's so he's flathead.
Yep. Well, I remember when we used to go out in the bay, you could get nothing but flathead, and we were trying to get snapper. But you couldn't get anything but flathead. Oh, another one.
Yeah, and they were pretty small.
Yeah, a lot of them were small.
I used to tell people they were quite big, actually. But
Yeah, it's they're sand flathead in our bays mostly. I actually think they're in a bit of trouble as a species. Whilst a lot about fishing in Victoria is very good.
is that why the price has gone up?
Oh, it all relates to demand.
Yep.
But sand flathead for the most part probably don't form the biggest part of the commercial catch. The commercial catch all occurs offshore. That's one great thing the VFA did was they bought out all the netting licenses except for one in Corner Inlet right across the state. So all of our bays and estuaries are recreational fishing havens for the most part. That's one of the reasons why fishing's so good. Like, I'll give the VFA its dues. I'm not just about bashing them. Like I said, I'm a supporter. It's this issue that's divided me and them.
Yeah, right.
So there's been some great work done. Most of the flathead we consume is trawl netted offshore. Some are sand, absolutely, but a lot of them are tiger flathead.
Over that, Neil, we have 20. What is it? Do my maths. 24 minutes left of this gentleman.
Yep.
We need to come back on another topic, which is rather late.
And welcome back to The Man Show. You're listening to Murray and Neil, and we are chatting with our special guest, John Cahill, who's just been telling us all about the issues that Victoria is currently facing, and in particular, Eildon is facing in relation to our fishing situation. But we got a couple of other subjects that we wanted to get on with, Murray, and we've had some people texting in.
Yes, we have, and it's all been fairly common. We've had a couple of texts, and they're saying, when are you getting onto the hunting bit with this guy?
Well, we better do that right now before we completely run out of time. It's 1:38, for goodness sake. Where is the time gone? So
apparently there's a hunting bit to talk about, John.
Apparently there is. There's a bit of hunting that goes on around here.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that we've got plague of deer going on around here at the moment. I seen the most social media that I see that people complaining about deer walking through their backyard. And what's going on? Are you guys not hunting enough?
There's certainly no shortage of them. It's not a new issue though. It's I'd be interested to know if people are perceiving it as it's a continual increase or not, or it's been a problem for a number of years, perhaps. I don't know, but yeah, there's no shortage of them. In our region here, there's a lot of sambar deer, and there's also a lot of fallow deer. So, like I said, I'm camped out on a property on the Delatide Arm, and yesterday afternoon we went for a bit of a drive in towards evening, and we probably saw 100 deer.
Wow.
And in talking to the land manager, I actually posed him that question. I said, what level do you perceive of deer to be an actual problem? He goes, well, you break it down. Each of these animals has got a high capacity for their grass consumption. Grass is actually scarce at the moment. A lot of people are feeding actually a lot of hay at the moment. They're feeding a lot of mouths that aren't paying the bills.
Yeah.
I look at it in other ways, like road hazard. You don't want to hit a deer, especially a big solid sambar. That's way worse to hit than a kangaroo. I can promise you that one. And I'm hyper vigilant of that because I often drive up to the region through Yea from Melbourne through here in pre-dawn. Very common for me to do that. And I've had some near misses. I'm touched wood though. I haven't collided with one. But yeah, that's a bad day if you hit a deer 100%.
Is there anything you can do to minimise that risk, John? Because years ago I had some of those little whistles that you attach to the front of your car. Are those things useless?
Yeah, do they work? I don't know. I can combat it by really good driving lights and light bars.
Yeah, right.
And being hyper vigilant and look, to be honest, unless there's oncoming traffic when I'm traveling, I just position myself. I give myself a little bit of room from the left edge.
Yeah,
So that's probably more than likely where it's going to come out from behind a bush or something like
So
that
this
last minute.
This confusion, I'm certainly no expert, but my perception was some years ago that hunters would come up here and they would go up into the high country, and if they smelt one, it was a pretty good weekend. They were sort of the perception was that they were that scarce. Now they're walking around. Have they come down? Have they always been there?
Really good point. So my sambar deer hunting began in the early 80s. We go back that far. There's a lot of years where I didn't do much, like I said, in my SOG years, but I've certainly done plenty of it again over the years that followed. If you go back to then, to that early 80s, you were stoked if you saw one. You really, really were, let alone shot one. To me, if you shot one, and I'm not talking about a trophy stag here, you shot one at all in a year, you were pumped. Oh, I shot 3 this morning.
You shot 3 this morning?
Yeah, 3 fallow deer this morning. Yeah.
Okay.
They're on the particular property I'm at the moment. Of course, it was early morning. They're out. They haven't gone back to cover yet. You won't see one now because they're all up in the trees. But they're out on pasture, which is what they'll do during the night. And then, it's dawn, they start to move back. So I got them at the right time. That's why I got 3. Otherwise, you might be lucky to perhaps shoot 1 or maybe 2. There's a lot of them out there. They've got to be culled. They've got to be controlled. What I personally, because I see them as a great resource as well. We eat a fair bit of venison as a family. They like to take the nicer cuts. Now, I've got a very hungry, rather large Rottweiler who also likes venison. So, hence why I shot 3 this morning. It is the meat's all coming back with me to Melbourne to feed both the combination of my family and my dog.
Yeah, John, there might be some people listening who sort of think, who shot Bambi's mum type of thing.
It was
like, that was you. But why are they a pest?
Oh well, they're in the bush. I'm less able to answer to that. But when they're on pasture, it's quite clear they're thieving pasture.
Yeah.
A bit like our kangaroos, but our kangaroos enjoy protection. Up in the bush, I think they're an asset. I think they're an absolute asset. When you get into the high country, there are things that they do that aren't ideal. When you get into the real high country, there's some mosses and peats and stuff that they damage by their wallowing, and they eat some of it. That's not ideal. There's a bit of destruction of habitat that does occur. Not a patch on the Brummies, I'll add, but they do some things that aren't necessarily desirable up there. But for the most part, Victoria, and I know this from my role at LRD, Victoria has 60,000 hunters that pay a game license every year to hunt deer. That's huge.
Yeah.
I know, we've got millions of people, but 60,000 people want to come up into this high country and they want to go, they either want to go chase a trophy stag to hang on the wall or meat or both. A lot of money, a lot of businesses support that. So I come from a position of value, and yep, 100% though. When they're in the wrong places, they need to be knocked down.
And like fishing, is there a bag limit?
No.
That's what we call it.
So it's funny. Deer, for the most part in Victoria, are kind of unregulated, other than you need a game license if you're operating in public land, not if you're on private property. Open season all year, take as many as you actually want. But there's one deer that does have a season. That's hog deer down in Gippsland on the coastal fringe that have a short season. You have to get tags. I think that will change. I think they're going to become much less regulated. Deer are in a transition in our legal space currently. They were once considered game. and protected as game and regulated as game, the arguments are getting stronger and stronger for deer to be regarded as a pest, noxious animal, and like no more protection afforded than a fox. We saw some changes happen legislatively in the last year where in daylight hours, a thermal imager is now legal. That was previously absolutely forbidden. It was as bad as spotlighting on public land. And I was actually involved in some of the consultation around that change. And my position was this. If you want more deer shot, if you want your hunters making more of an impact on this animal that is either real or perceived as being a problem, give them some tools that can help them find and shoot more deer. But my thing was absolutely this. Do not let those thermal images be weapon mounted. They can only be an aid to observation to find deer.
Yeah, right.
If they're weapon mounted, someone will get shot. Because, like, okay, if you're looking up in the bush, you see a heat source. You don't always see this lovely shape of a deer, right? Sometimes it's like there's something behind that bush. I just hate to think people that would take a shot.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we're talking about something behind the bush. I want to digress just a little bit.
Right.
And I touched on this with you several months ago when we had a bit of a chat by phone. You ran up against the button man.
Did we discuss that on the last show?
I think we did. I think you gave me a bit of an insight, and I'm sure there's plenty of our listeners out there who would love to hear what your experience with the button man was.
So I've got to say, he's the most overhyped individual in the high country. The things that he's, the folklore around him, I think, has gotten very rich. But anyway, nonetheless, he's certainly a person of interest. So I ran out into him up near Bluff Hut. I was up on I was going into the high country for 4 or 5 days, which I love to do as often as I can, but in reality, it's once or twice a year. I get that chance to go away for that length of time, and I was solo. And it was one of those times we got an unseasonal, massive snow dump in November. Like, not when you'd expect it. The gates are open. And I got up the top and I saw this Land Cruiser and this camp, and I'm like, oh, damn, he's right where I wanted to camp. And I'm not going to camp there. I'll go down King Billy and camp down there. But I'm looking, I go, that has to be the button man, just the look of the camp. So I drove over and got out and approached, and I met this gentleman, and we had a brief conversation, and I introduced myself. I said, look, I'm going to be in here hunting. I'm going to go down King Billy, just so you know. And I did a little bit tactically because he's got a reputation of like surprising people in the night, doing basically what I did to them, but in the middle of the night. And I'm like, I don't really want him to come and visit me in the middle of the night. I'm going to be solo. So I got on the front foot. That's what I did. And I was, you're the button man. And he smiled, big smile on his face. Oh, they do call me that, And we look, it was a pretty brief. That was a 5-minute conversation, but on my way I went, and I went down and I actually got snowed in. We had another big dump that night, and I was not going anywhere for days until we had a bit of melt. No chance I was getting out. And on my way out, when I eventually got a nice sunny day and the melted pretty fast, I stopped by his camp again on the way out, and I thought to myself, this is too good an opportunity to pass up. And I had eggs and milk that, I was taking back home, but I offered them to him. I said, oh, look, I'm going off the mountain. Like, can you use this? We got a conversation, and he was up for a chat, and we had a coffee. He offered me a coffee, and I sat down with him around his fire, and he is pretty engaging fellow. He got a little bit dark at one point in the conversation, but, it was just really interesting to just look around and take in his environment and understand this little bit about him. He spends a lot of time in Melbourne. He's got a house in Melbourne. But,
I didn't realise.
Yeah, he does in the inner north. But he obviously has his periods of the year where he heads up to the high country for significant periods. And I think he appears downtown a fair bit. But here's a funny story. So I said to him, can I take a photo of you? And he looked back at me a little bit like, why do you want a photo of me? And I said, my mates won't believe I've met you, and I'd like to show them. So he said, I'll allow you to take a photo on one condition, John. What's that? He goes, you send that to me. Send that to me. And I said, well, I'll need your number if I'm going to send it to you, because I'll gladly do it. And he gave me his number, put it in my phone. When I drove off the mountain, I did two things. The first thing I did was ring the homicide squad and say, are you looking for this fella called the Button Man, Alex? And they said, no, we've already excluded him from the Wanangata investigation, but he's an interesting chap, isn't he? I said, yeah, he is. And I sent him the photo. Anyway, fast forward. It's Christmas Eve. And I put him in my phone, Alex the Button Man. Christmas Eve, I'm at work at the VPC in the city, and my phone rang, Alex the Button Man.
Wow.
Like, I wasn't in a position to answer it anyway, but I think I'll just let that go to voicemail. And he left me a voice message. And he's got a very distinct way of speaking in voice. I think he's quite educated, the way he speaks. And he said, hi, John, got your photo. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It's lovely. I'd just like to wish you and your family all the best for Christmas, and, keep safe. And wow, I know. It's amazing. And I'm actually devastated. The handset that was on, I lost. It's at the bottom of Port Phillip Bay.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's not the worst of it. There's my third daughter's birth photos and videos on that phone.
Oh, no.
I got in a lot of trouble for losing that phone.
Yeah, not good move.
Yeah, the Button Man's voice memo was the least of my issues for losing that phone, I'll tell you that anyway.
We didn't get in as much trouble as I did when I overdid our wedding video with The Simpsons.
Oh, that's not ideal. Guys, I do want to run through a few rapid fire questions with you, John. But we've got a few more sponsor messages we just need to run through, and we'll come back with John Cahill, and we'll find out a little bit about. You're back with the Man Show, and we're live in the studio with Johnny Cahill, who's given us some amazing stories. I hope you've been entertained this afternoon. What do you reckon, Murray?
Oh, I can't imagine entertainment being of any higher level, Neil.
Hard act to follow indeed. And before we let you go, John, I do want you to cover off how our listeners can follow up on those concerns about the VFA stuff. So I'll make sure that whatever else we do, we cover off that. But I want to use the next few minutes before we hand over to Oscar. And I see Oscar's next door setting up for the ozone. So stay tuned for that, listeners. But I wanted to have a quick rapid fire with you, Jono, and get your feelings on some of these issues. So can you tell me your most admired or influential person in history and why?
I wish I had someone like Martin Luther King or Napoleon or something to give you, but the one that comes to mind for me personally is actually Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I know that's probably not a very conventional answer, but where Arnold first, became a person of prominence to me was in my youth. I loved to exercise, and I had a bodybuilding phase. And it was in that time, the back end of Arnold's amazing career as, the best bodybuilder in the world.
Yeah.
He came and took on the world, all the Americans from a small village in Graz in Austria. And, we all know how bad his English was and how bad his acting was. But he challenged himself and took on the best of Hollywood to eventually become a absolute blockbuster superstar.
Incredible, wasn't it?
Incredible.
Didn't even stop there.
It didn't stop there. He married a Kennedy.
Yep.
And that's royalty in the USA. Absolute royalty. They might be married to her now, but had kids with a Kennedy and was married. That's just extraordinary. But then he challenges himself to become a politician, and he becomes the governor of California twice. I think it's just an extraordinary story that a guy from Austria who, came from a very small town with belief and talent and just dogged persistence. What is possible?
I can completely understand why you would answer the way you have, because I can see some similarities that you've reinvented yourself and come back in a few different guises, and you've certainly throw yourself in 100% at whatever.
I do that. I throw myself in, yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, listen, John, what would, if you had the capacity to offer some advice to a 17-year-old John Cahill, what would today's John Cahill say to a 17-year-old John?
You shouldn't have left school yet.
Oh, okay.
Clear room.
Yeah, school wasn't for me, and whilst I in my policing career I did pursue further education in the long run. I actually, this is a little funny story. I wanted to do uni studies, and even joining as an adult, you have to provide your last school report.
Yep.
And I didn't have a school report. My parents didn't have it, like it had been disposed of, and for good reason. I contacted my old school in Shepparton and said, you know, have you got this stuff archived? And they certainly did. And they sent me a copy of my last known school report. And I read it and I went, wow. So on my university application, under, you know, attach, can't, destroyed in fire.
Yeah, wise decision. Wise decision. John, you've been involved in a lot of different stuff. How do you want to be remembered? If your time was coming to an end and you were aware of that, how would you like to be remembered?
So one of the most desirable attributes that I think were passed on from my dad to me, as they were always pressed to me and I always pressed to my daughters, you know, my circle of influence, is honesty and integrity and owning your mistakes. Yeah. I think it's actually, unfortunately, quite rare for people to say, sorry, I stuffed up, I'll do better next time. And I feel like I can do that probably too often. Probably like
Become a feature.
It becomes a feature, but I think it's a really strongly desirable attribute to be able to own your own drama that you might create or the issues that you create, and I think just remembered as a good person who had honesty and integrity, and work hard.
Now, you've passed away. Where do you want to be buried, or where would you like to have your ashes scattered?
Well, that's actually a matter of fact because it's in my will.
Oh, okay.
2 nautical miles out into Bass Strait, please.
Right, you are. That's very specific. Why so?
Well, it's considered true offshore waters when you get 2 nautical miles out, and I spend a lot of time in Bass Strait. I love the place. It's kind of mostly my summer playground out there, chasing tuna and kingfish,
Fantastic,
and sharks and the like. And yeah, I don't want to occupy another piece of real estate that someone needs to build a condo on, on land. Put me out to sea.
All right, we'll see what we can organise for you. Well, folks, that's where we have to call an end to it. We're just on 2:00, and before we let you go, John, can you please just remind our listeners what they should do if they